First, though, tensions are continuing to rise on the world stage as peace talks over the future of Ukraine continue. In the last couple of hours, Ukraine's President, Volodymyr Zelensky, has criticised President Trump for bringing Russian leader Vladimir Putin out of isolation and living in a disinformation space, as he terms it. Earlier this week, Sir Keir Starmer said that he was ready and willing to put British troops in Ukraine. And today, the former Supreme Allied Commander has warned that Britain must be prepared to protect itself and make plans for conscription, which all sounds very alarming, Janet. I mean, are we on the brink of conflict?
It's a lot of macho posturing, in my opinion.
I
think that the Americans have said there will be no agreement about the future of Ukraine without Ukraine being represented at the debate, at the table. And for the time being, I think you have to think that. But what we've got are two world leaders excluding the country that the war is all about. And
also Trump has said today that there should be elections in Ukraine, and he's suggested that Zelensky's popularity is very low, which there doesn't seem to be any great evidence for, and is something that Russia would actually celebrate. So
yeah, but you may not be able to get a peace without movement. You don't get peace by just shouting, we want this, we want this, we want that. There has to be negotiation. But I do agree that President Trump is a businessman who sees everything in terms of, you know, business strategy. And Putin is a leader who's only managed to stay in power by building up mythology about himself, presenting himself as the all-powerful leader, whereas in truth, both Russia and America are worried about China. So it suits them to get together to take on China
but I
further
guess the
down the
question
line.
is, where does that leave us? I mean, Katie, are you engaging with this? Are you feeling anxious or not?
I mean, I'm not trying to encourage other people to take this approach, but I have to be completely honest. I'm one of those people that completely bury my head in the sand. I don't want to know about it. I don't feel that it's something that I can control or change. So I almost try to ignore it. You know, if I see articles about it, I purposely don't click on them. And I know that's probably a bit naive and ignorant, but, yeah, it does make me anxious if I start reading it, just hearing you two.
Is that because when the war started in Ukraine, we had blanket coverage of it? It was truly shocking. Then we offered refuge to Ukrainian families, and refugees came here, and we felt very close to the conflict in all sorts of ways. And could it be that the conflict has gone on so long that people here feel jaded? And like Katie says, they've seen it on the news for so long now.
Desensitised as well. But, I mean, I have a real issue with when you think, like, when I was raised, you saw news bulletins and you heard factual pieces of information, right? Now, you can go on social media and if somebody gets attacked with a machete in central London, you can see mobile phone footage of that actually happening. We don't need to see that level of crime and conflict.
Is it actually happening or is it AI? So we've gone to another thing. And, you know, Zelensky saying that President Trump exists in a disinformation space. But talking about Ukraine, I think what we're being asked to focus on is 3.5 years ago, Ukrainians were living the same life that we were living. They were going to coffee shops. They were working as, you know, digital web designers. They were doing up their flats. They were watching the television exactly like we are as Europeans. And then came the point of the invasion where the young men and women were signed up to go to war and tens of thousands have lost their life. I mean, you know, this is not an unreal possibility for us now. So, you know, if Louis got the call...
Oh, I'd be petrified if my son got the call. Honestly, I really, really would. And I love this country and I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. But I am worried about it now. I didn't even know anything about this until today when we got into work and that. And I am really, really frightened.
So what's changed you then?
Hearing that there could be another war. I don't watch the news. Well, I don't read a newspaper.
What we've had is the former joint commander of NATO, deputy commander, saying we need to put 10,000 troops on the ground, 10,000 training and 10,000 resting. In other words, if we're going to really help Ukrainians, it needs 30,000 troops, and that's half.
But we don't even look after our soldiers. Look at the way they're looked after in America. Ours aren't looked after in this country, are they?
I think it's left to a lot of charities.
When you're in war, soldiers aren't looked after. If you go back to the Second World War...
But when they come back from war, they don't get looked after.
After the war, Second World War, well, 400,000 around soldiers, young men, British men, lost their lives in the war. They weren't looked after. So many more came back and they weren't looked after because war is grim. There's no room to look after people, really, in war. And, I mean, I agree with you, Janet. I hope we're not in that situation, but... This is about more than a peacekeeping force, because what we know now is America's no longer our friend. Things have changed fundamentally, and we've all got to start getting real about it.
Yeah, but there's a big
like the Ukrainians had to wake up 3.5 years ago to realise life wasn't holidays and houses and all of that stuff.
The disconnect is between Keir Starmer's point, we're going to put forces on the ground, we're going to have a peacekeeping force. There's a big disconnect between that kind of statement and the reality of people of Katie's generation who think, oh, hang on, let's row back a bit from this, you know. How involved do we want to get?
Well, some people don't identify with the poppy. They don't want to wear the poppy. They're anti-war. You know, I think it's a completely different generation when you're talking about compulsory, you know, calling men up to fight. I think it would be completely different.
It is. But as Janet says, you know, Trump is all about the money, you know, and it's about gaining economic power, whereas when we're talking about World War II, where it's about fighting for British values, what we perceive as British values. And if you're right, Katie, and people don't believe in British values anymore, then it's going to be really difficult to motivate people to fight for Britain, isn't it?
That's right.
I mean, what was that survey we had a couple of weeks ago about the number of young people who didn't particularly value democracy and thought they quite happily live under a dictatorship? 41% are proud of Britain now. That's a stat that we have. So how are you going to motivate people to fight for it?